What's up, YouTube? Capital G here, giving you guys a really nice 4K deck profile of Batteryman. For my money, one of the most fun, rewarding, and aggressive decks in the game. If you don't know much about this archetype, it plays a lot like the Fusion Cheese archetypes from Arc V, like Luna Lights, Fluffles, and Ancient Gears. Batteryman is an archetype that wants to kind of OTK you within the first 3 turns or so, because after that, you kind of burn yourself out. You are not going to outgrind a lot of decks with Batteryman, so you kind of have to get the job done within the first 3 turns. A lot of people look at Batteryman, they see like 1,000 attack monster, they see 100 attack monster, they think that this deck doesn't have a lot of offense, but that's really what Batteryman specializes in. This deck can routinely drop like 10,000 damage in a turn, and you really can catch your opponent sleeping. Now, I have included some kind of anti-meta defenses because a lot of times Batteryman can't defend themselves all that well, and it's basically supposed to make you last through the first couple of turns until you can catch your opponent slipping and just completely cheese, like RKO them or something like that. Now, I'm not saying, as I usually would, but I'm not saying that this is the definitive best version, but I feel like this is a very solid version for competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! And obviously, if there are any ways that you guys think can improve this deck, you know, go ahead and leave it in the comment section below. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. Obviously, you guys saw on the top, we got 3 copies of the Batteryman 9 volts. This is, for if you don't know anything about Batteryman, this is basically Batteryman Stratos. Not only does it search the entire archetype, but it actually searches itself as well. It is a hard once per turn when it comes to that search. It's only 1,000 attack, but that's fine because when it activates its search effect, as long as that resolves, it does double its original attack and defense. So it's really good because, I mean, you're talking about a 2,000 attack level 4 monster that can beat over like Link 2s and whatnot. It blows itself up during your end phase, but if you do summon it during your opponent's turn, then it doesn't blow itself up. Basically, this is the card you want to see like turn 1 every game. Ideally, you want to summon 9 volts, find a way to summon them during your opponent's turn, and then just try and pop off and OTK them from there. You're always going to run 3 of this card. It came out in Duelist Alliance before 9 volt. Batteryman didn't even function as an archetype. Like, this literally made this entire deck feasible. So run 3 9 volts forever. We have Kirby, 3 copies of Micro Cell. Micro Cell is a funny card. It has an incredibly high ceiling, but it can be kind of bricky at 3. I think I've ran versions where I have 2 of them, but the thing is, you want to open with either like Micro Cell or you want to open with 9 volt within the first 2 turns, or you're going to lose. I feel very confident in saying that. If you don't get one of these cards in the first 2 turns, you're basically just done, unless your opponent's playing some gimmicky like Exodia or something like that. So Micro Cell summons a level 4 or lower Batteryman from your deck. You only have one target, which is this, but this is the most important one. And it's really cool because not only do you get the search from 9 volt and then he gets the attack upgrade, but as well as this being a flip effect, if your opponent attacks it when it's face down, if this card is flip face up and destroyed by battle, it actually lets you draw a card as well. So a lot of times you'll get this effect off. It will draw you a card. You'll summon 9 volt from your deck. It will search a card, and then it will double its attack. And it's like, not only do you get 2 cards added to your hand, which is almost a new hand, but then you still have a monster on board as well. And even if they can't run over your 9 volt because it has the 2k booty or it has 2k attack, you still have a monster on board. So like, this card has an incredibly high ceiling. Don't ever want to draw multiples of it. And honestly, it's only good in the first probably 3 turns. After that, it's kind of mediocre. Next up, we have your win condition. This is the card that basically lets you pop off and try to kill your opponent. This is Batteryman Charger. Charger is a level 5, so you do want to, you have to tribute something to get it on the field, which kind of sucks, but that's fine because when you normal summon this, aka tribute summon for it, it does summon another Batteryman from the deck except itself, and then that Batteryman obviously can, do its thing. But the really cool thing is this card gains 300 attack for each Thunder monster on your side of the field, which includes itself. So even though it's only 1,800 for a level 5, it's fine because it's really 2,100. And the way you basically pop off with Batteryman is you summon Charger, and then you basically summon your 9 volt from your deck. Your 9 volt will then search another monster. This card will get another 300 from your 9 volt, and it'll also be 2,000. And then you can summon something like Fuel Cell, and then you have a ton of damage on board. And if you summon, if you basically resolve your Micro Cell, a lot of times what will happen is Micro Cell will flip face up. You'll draw a card. You'll get 9 volt as well. 9 volt will search Fuel Cell. If your opponent doesn't kill this, you tribute the 9 volt on the field for Fuel Cell. You search another 9 volt volt, you get another search, you get just a ton of advantage. I think I said fuel cell. What I meant was a Batteryman charger, but this is basically the card that lets you pop off, and when you resolve it, a lot of times you're trying to push for game. It's actually very easy, even though again this guy's only 1800. It's very easy to get this guy over 3000 attack. So we also play 3 copies of Fuel Cell, which I think I just kept mixing up with Batteryman Charger. This is another high-level monster. It's level 6, which you think, oh man, Cap, what's up with all these high-level monsters? But it's fine. You can special summon this card if you have 2 or more Batteryman monsters on the field. So it should be kind of clear that once you resolve or once you summon your Charger, you're always going to get 9 volt from your deck. And then when your 9 volt is generally going to search this, and you're just going to special summon it to the field. It has a second effect because it's only 2100 attack, but you're special summoning it, so it's not really that big of a deal, where you can tribute a Batteryman monster and then you get the evac one of your opponent's monsters. It can't tribute itself, but you can tribute other monsters. Usually you'll tribute your 9 volts and you'll just try and punch through for game. We won 1 copy of the last Batteryman monster in this deck. This is Industrial Strength. This is kind of like your big boss monster. I don't think it's consistent enough to run multiples. You don't summon this guy as you do the other ones. This is a monster that you summon by banishing 2 Batteryman monsters from your graveyard, and it can blow up a monster and a spell and trap on the field, but it has to blow up both. So if your opponent just has a spell and trap in their back row or just as a monster, then you have to be willing to sacrifice your cards. But this guy is 2600, so he's definitely like a card that can do a lot of damage. Because Batteryman, like the rest of them, are kind of garbage, I do run our artifact engine in here, a very small artifact engine. I run 2 copies of Artifact Scythe. That's it. If you guys are wondering why I don't run Morale Tech, man, I tried so hard to get Morale Tech to work in this damn deck. I kept drawing that fucking card. Even when I did summon it, like, it wasn't that impactful. Like, maybe 3 years ago, during, like, the Hat era where Morale Tech was, like, busted, it was really good. But now, Artifact Scythe is just way better. The fact that Scythe stops the Link Summon is invaluable in this deck, and it's just a really good card. Plus, it's actually light. It's level 5. It lets you go into some really good XC plays, like Pallades, if you want to give up your Charger. So it's a really good card. And it works really good with Call to Haunted with Batteryman also run. I run 2 copies of Honest because this is a light deck. I think every single monster I've shown you guys is light. Not only are the artifacts all light, but then Batteryman are all light as well. So if you happen to resolve a micro cell and you summon your 9 volts and your opponent is trying to attack over your 9 volt because he's only 2000 attack, you can shut him down with Honest and then try to pop off during your next turn. Very good card. I play only 1 real hand trap in this deck. Well, I guess you could call Honest a hand trap, so I guess it's 3 hand traps. We run the Max C. I feel like Max C in this deck works because Max C can become, 4 or 5 different cards, but like, I don't think Ash Blossoms is needed in this deck. Not only will Ash Blossom like really, it'll definitely help you brick your hands and lose, but like stopping 1 card from your opponent is not that important in this deck. Like you'd rather have one of your combo pieces than stop 1 card. The reason that you play the reason you play Max C is because Max C becomes another card and it can become multiple cards. So, and it stops your opponent. Ash Blossom is just not worth it in my opinion. I play 3 copies of Twin Twister, the only spell in this deck I run 3 copies of. So, there are some brick cards in this deck. Like you don't want to draw Artifact Scythe. You don't ever want to really draw artifacts in this deck. Sometimes you open with multiple micro cells, or you have like the tribute bouncers, the Batteryman that you can't summon. Get rid of them, pitch them for Twin Twister. When you're trying to OTK your opponent, you need back row removal anyways. And the one good thing about Twin Twister is it can blow up your artifacts. So if your artifacts are set on your side of the field, your opponent's not taking the bait, no problem, and just blowing up your artifact, locking them out of their extra deck for a turn, and then hopefully you can find some type of offense and a way to kill them. I run a bunch of pot cards in this deck. So we have 2 dualities and 2 copies of Desires. So it's kind of crazy, right? I have a love-hate relationship with Desires. I'll talk about duality first. Batteryman is almost identical to something like Dark Magician. Your first turn is basically like a setup turn. You're trying to like set your copy of Microcell or I don't know, like summon 9 volts and get like a quick search off of it. And you're not going to really special summon in your first turn unless you're going second, which this deck always wants to do. But unless you open with like Monarch Stormforth plus Charge and you have the perfect play, you really don't need the special summon turn 1. So this is a way of adding consistency, making sure you get to microcell and your 9 volts and making sure you don't brick, because as I told you, if you don't get those cards in the first 2 turns, like you will lose the duel 99% of the time. This card, sometimes I hate it because you activate it and you like banish all your good Batteryman, but I don't know. I found like with just duality, I wasn't getting to 9 volts enough. So I decided to add these two in. And the thing is, like, neither card works without the other. Like, playing 3 dualities is like you'll never special summon. You'll always open with like double duality. And playing 3 of this is just terrible. Like, you'll get rid of all your like live cards. So you don't want to play 3 of either one. So I feel like 2/2 is fine. To the one-ofs, we have the Monarch Storm 4th. Obviously, I showed you guys what. Chargers level 5, we run 3 of those. Fuel cells level 6, we run 3 of those. The main thing you want to do is you want to use this to summon Charger. You take one of your opponent's monsters, get that off the field, and you get the pop off. A lot of times you're trying to go for a game that turn. So Monarch Storm 4th is always going to be good in Batteryman because you run so many high-level monsters. Worst case scenario, you can summon Artifact Sight with this if you're desperate, but I wouldn't recommend it. And then Battery Charger. This is basically Monster Reborn for the archetype. Pay 500 life points, summon a Batteryman from your graveyard. It's mainly just a damage card, or if like you have two fuel cells on the field and you use the evac effect, which means you have to tribute 1, then you can like use this to summon the second one back to the field. And 500 life points to do 2100 to your opponent, like you'll always take that trade. So then we have the other one-ups. Regeki and Dark Hole are kind of self-explanatory in this deck, especially Regeki. I mean, this is an OTK or best deck for the most part, so you're always looking for cards that just get rid of your opponent's entire field. That's what these two do. Instant Fusion is interesting, right? So Instant Fusion in this deck, not only, it's kind of like the Monarch Storm 4th, not quite as good, but almost. So basically, you summon a Thousand Eyes Restrict with this, you eat up one of your opponent's monsters, you turn it into a Link Karibo, and then you tribute the Thousand Eyes Restrict, and basically it kind of is very similar to it's very similar to Storm 4th in that case. The only difference is obviously it targets, so not quite as good, and it does cost 1,000 life points, but it's almost as good. That's it for the spells. We run 3 copies of Call of the Haunted. Historically, Batteryman have always ran this card at 3. You know what this card is for, basically. Well, actually, there's 2 things you can do. Number 1, you can summon an artifact off of it, which is really nice. If you go into Pallades, it's really good because you get the bounce constantly, and you can like cycle your Call of the Haunted, and you can constantly lock your opponent out of their extra deck with Scythe. But for the most part, what you want to do is you want to summon your 9-volt back, especially during your opponent's end phase. You search off 9-volt, you get your Batteryman Charger. This card does not die, you tribute, and then obviously you just pop off with it. So Call of the Haunted has always been like the best trap card in this deck. I run 3 copies of Artifact Sanctum. You don't ever want to draw multiple of these. For the most part, it's kind of like, it's a little bit of filler for your deck. Like, you kind of hope that you banish like 2 of them with Pot of Desires. You don't ever want to open multiple of this card, otherwise just Twin Twister it. If your opponent is dumb, they try and hit your back row, maybe you'll get lucky and they'll hit this. But yeah, this summons your Artifact Sight from the field. Hopefully your opponent has to stop that turn. So, you know, if you're going to run artifacts, you're probably running a couple copies of Sanctum. And then we run, God Says No, run a little Solemn Engine. So what I realized about this deck is, you do have Call of the Haunted, you have artifacts, and you do have like a couple of things to stop your opponent from doing what they want to do, Max C, but there's not a lot of them. So I feel like if your opponent's going to massive Pendulum Summon, or they're going to go for a big Borreload or something like that, something that's going to be difficult for you to stop, like the Solemns are just, they're good enough. I mean, you can try Trap Stuns, but I felt like Trap Stun was just kind of bricky, and we already had the Twin Twister, so I felt like these cards in a vacuum were just good enough as like kind of good standalone cards. They make your opening hands better, especially if you need to make sure you protect like your micro cell. It needs to go off, making sure your opponent doesn't like blow it up or banish it or something like that. And then the final trap card, Torrential Tribute. So I wanted a blanket card that kind of stopped everything, and as I showed you guys before, the Call of the Haunted play is really big. What you need to do with Batteryman is just not lose. The deck will naturally win the deck will win. You just need to like not lose before you kind of get your cards to set up. Very similar to Dark Magician. You're just trying to get your combo pieces, and then you're trying to like pop off. So this was a really good card that I felt like kind of covered everything. And also just a lot of the other cards in Batteryman aren't good. So you have to put some really good spells and traps to kind of make up for that fact that like half of the Batteryman archetype is still kind of garbage. For the extra deck, we run 1 copy of Gaga Cowboy. It looks gimmicky, and it is, but sometimes your opponent will have that little smidgen of life points left. Cowboy for game is actually very relevant in this deck. I run the Utopia package as well. This is a sack deck, so why not be able to, basically sack your opponent. If you ever have Honest and 9-volt on the field at the same time, then you can combine them, go into this. Hopefully you can cheese your opponent. For the 5s, I run Pallades. You do run artifacts in this deck, and Charger is a level 5 as well. So Pallades is especially good, and As I said earlier, you can kind of bounce your Call of the Haunted. Mainly, you want to bring back either 9 volts or actually even better, just bring back Artifact Scythe and then just bounce it and, constantly have your opponent locked out of their extra deck for a turn. We play Volcasaurus, kind of another cheese card. It's a rank 5. I don't have enough room in here for Gaia Dragon, though, which kind of sucks. But, I mean, this is kind of like a magic cylinder. Blow one of your opponent's monsters up. Hopefully, you can attack another monster as well. For the 6s, we run the M7. Sometimes if your Pallades runs out of materials, you can actually go into M7. It's not going to happen all that much, but you can make this either with your fuel cells or you can make it with the Pallades. I run Gauntlet Launcher, just kind of the blow up cards on your opponent's side of the field, more 6s. We run Utopia, the Utopia Beyond, which is another amazing card for this archetype. 6s are incredibly easy for this deck to make, just 2 fuel cells, and this one lets you do a lot of damage because it makes all your opponent's monsters 0 attack. And then we run the Photon Strike Bouncer, which, I mean, it's okay if you fail to OTK your opponent. Like, I would rather have Photon Strike Bouncer than 2 fuel cells because at least this can negate a card and it does 1,000 burn damage. And sometimes that 1,000 burn damage, like Cowboy for Game, is enough to make your opponent like lose. So it's enough to win you the duel. So sometimes you'll just lock them out of effects altogether and they have to kill this card with like a Kaiju or something like that. Then for the instant fusion targets, I play 1 Ojama Knight because I'm too poor to afford a Panzer Dragon. Play Panzer Dragon if you have it. If not, just play this. It's not going to be that relevant, honestly. We play Thousand Eyes Restrict for the Link Karibo plays level 1, suck up your opponent's monster. And then this can just be any level 4 monster that you can instant fusion out. I happen to have this one, so whatever. It can just be whatever monster. It's just so that you can go into your cheese, Utopia the Lightning plays. And then finally for the Link monsters, I was playing Utopia the Lightning, or not Utopia the Lightning, Decode Talker, but I don't think Decode Talker is all that good in this deck. You're not really good, like, you're not going to give up 3 monsters to go into Decode Talker. And I know some of you guys are like, well, why would you give up 4 monsters for Borreload? Borreload is that good. Borreload is good enough to give up 4 monsters. If these are really Decode Talker and Borreload, they're only for if you fail to OTK, right? If you fail to OTK against like Trickstars and you have like a Borreload plus like a Solemn Strike, that's good enough to win. Like, this card will take over the game. Decode Talker doesn't take over the game, in my opinion. So this one's for, obviously, Thousand Eyes Restrict. This one is because basically the entire deck outside of the artifacts on Max C are Thunder. And Honest is, what, like a fairy? Look, the Batteryman or Thunder. That's how you make it. And then this is because if you fail to OTK, Borreload is good enough to actually, like, take over a game, whereas Decode Talker, in my opinion, is not. So whatever you guys think, leave it in the comment section below. If you guys like Batteryman, give the video a thumbs up. I will have more 4K deck profiles. I think we got Dark Magician, Fire Kings, Invoke, Trickstars, a whole bunch more coming. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. As always, subscribe if you have not already. Turn on that notification bell for daily videos.